The stars were dying. Commander Alara Vance stood at the observation window of the UESC Prometheus and watched another sun go dark. It happened slowly at first, the bright yellow light turning orange, then red, then nothing at all. Where a star had burned for billions of years, there was now only empty black space. The entropy bloom had taken another one. Behind her, the bridge crew worked in tense silence. They had seen this happen 100 times now. 1,000 times. The bloom moved through the galaxy like a wave of death, eating everything in its path. Stars, planets, moons, space stations. Nothing could stop it. Nothing could slow it down. "Commander," said Lieutenant Park, his voice tired and hollow. "The Valkyrie fleet reports they have finished evacuating the Korath system. 8 billion refugees are now in transit." Alara nodded but did not turn from the window. 8 billion lives saved. It should have felt like a victory. But she knew the truth. They were not saving anyone. They were just buying time. The bloom would catch up eventually. It always did. The Galactic Concord had tried everything. They had fired weapons at the bloom. They had built barriers around it. They had sent probes into its center to understand what it was. Nothing worked. The bloom was not a thing that could be fought. It was the end of everything, moving slowly but surely across the stars. Humanity had joined the Concord only 200 years ago. They were the youngest species in the Alliance, and the other races never let them forget it. The Valkyrie, with their hive minds and collective thinking, saw humans as chaotic and unpredictable. The Seraphine, beings made of pure light and energy, found human emotions strange and disturbing. The Korvath, proud warriors with scales like armor, thought humans were weak and soft. But right now, none of that mattered. All 12 species of the Concord faced the same enemy, and all 12 species were losing. Alara turned from the window and walked across the bridge. She was 43 years old, with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death. She had been a soldier for 20 years, and in that time she had fought pirates, rescued colonists, and explored unknown worlds. But nothing had prepared her for this. Nothing could prepare anyone for watching the universe die. "I will be in my quarters," she said to Lieutenant Park. "Wake me if anything changes." She did not expect anything to change. Her quarters were small and simple. A bed, a desk, a few personal items. She sat down heavily and closed her eyes, trying not to think about the billions of lives they could not save. The evacuation corridors could only hold so many ships. The refugee planets could only take so many people. Soon they would run out of places to run. That was when the light appeared. It started as a small glow in the corner of her room, soft and blue. Alara jumped to her feet, reaching for her weapon. But before she could move, the light grew brighter and brighter until it filled the entire room. She felt herself falling, spinning, dissolving into nothing. And then she was somewhere else. She stood in a place that was not a place. There was no floor beneath her feet, but she did not fall. There was no sky above her head, but she did not feel closed in. Everything around her was made of shifting colors and gentle sounds, like being inside a dream that someone else was dreaming. "Do not be afraid," said a voice. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It was deep and old, older than anything Alara had ever heard. It sounded like mountains moving, and oceans breathing, and stars being born. "Who are you?" Alara asked. Her voice did not shake. She was too tired to be afraid. "I am called the Architect," said the voice. "I am the one who planted the seeds of life in your galaxy, long before your sun existed. I watched your species crawl from the oceans and reach for the stars. I have watched all species do the same, across billions of years." A shape began to form in the swirling colors. It was not solid, not really. It was more like an idea of a shape, a suggestion of something too large to see completely. Alara caught glimpses of eyes, thousands of them, and hands, hundreds of them, and wings that stretched across dimensions she could not understand. "The entropy bloom," Alara said. "Can you stop it?" "Yes," said the architect. "I possess something called the axiom key. It can reverse the bloom completely. Every star that has died will burn again. Every world that has been destroyed will return. Your galaxy will be saved." Hope exploded in Alara's chest like a bomb. "Then why have you not used it? Trillions of lives have been lost. Entire civilizations have been erased. Why did you wait?" The architect was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was heavy with something that might have been sadness. "Because the key requires a price. It cannot work without fuel, and the only fuel it accepts is a soul. A conscious mind must give itself completely to the key, not just their life, but everything they are. Their memories, their personality, their sense of self. All of it dissolved forever. Not death, but something worse. Total ending. Complete nothing." Alara felt cold. "You want someone to sacrifice themselves." "I want nothing," said the architect. "I am only telling you what is required. I have offered this bargain to every species in the Concord. The Velkari, the Seraphini, the Korvath, all the others. Every single one has refused. Why? They find it unacceptable. The elder races value the collective above the individual, but they cannot accept that one soul could be worth an entire galaxy. The mathematics disturb them. The philosophy disturbs them. So they choose to die instead." Alara thought about this. She thought about the stars going dark, one by one. She thought about the children on the refugee ships, who would never see a stable home. She thought about everything humanity had built, and everything they still hope to build. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Why come to humans last?" The architect's many eyes seemed to focus on her all at once. "Because you frighten me," it said. "In all my long existence, I have never seen a species like yours. You run toward danger instead of away from it. You find meaning in suffering. You love things you know will end. I saved you for last because I thought you might be the ones to say yes." The colors swirled faster around her. She felt herself being pulled back to reality. "You have 72 hours, said the architect. "After that, the bloom will reach the main evacuation corridors. Millions of ships. Billions of lives. The choice is yours." And then Alara was back in her quarters, sitting on her bed with impossible knowledge burning in her mind and the weight of the galaxy pressing down on her shoulders. 72 hours to find someone willing to give up everything. 72 hours to save the universe. She stood up and walked to the door. There was no time to waste. The news spread through the Galactic Concord like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every species knew about the architect and its terrible offer. And within hours, every species began to argue about what it meant. The Valkyrie Dominion spoke first. Their ambassador was not one being but thousands, tiny creatures linked together in a hive mind that thought as one. When they spoke, their voice came from 100 mouths at once. "This bargain is illogical," they said. "No single consciousness holds value independent of the whole. To sacrifice one is meaningless because the one is nothing without the many. We cannot participate in such madness." The Seraphine collective agreed, though for different reasons. They were beings of pure energy, shimmering lights that flickered and danced as they communicated. Their religion taught that souls were eternal, cycling through existence forever. To destroy a soul completely was not just death. It was damnation. "We will not send one of our own into the void," their representative sang, its voice like crystal bells. Better to end in the bloom than to end in nothing. The Korvath Empire said the least, but their words carried the most weight. Their ambassador was a massive creature, 7 feet tall, covered in scales that glittered like dark gems. He stood with his arms crossed and his eyes cold. No Korvath would volunteer for such a thing, he said, and forced sacrifice would dishonor us all. This discussion is over. One by one, every species in the Concord said the same thing. No, we will not do this. We would rather die with our dignity than live with such a price tag. And then the human response came in. Within the first 12 hours, 3,000 humans had volunteered. The alien ambassadors did not believe it at first. They thought it was a mistake, a translation error, some kind of human joke they did not understand. But the numbers kept growing. 4,000, 5,000, 10,000. By the end of the first day, over 30,000 humans had sent their names forward, each one saying the same thing. Take me instead. The Volcari ambassador requested an emergency meeting with Commander Alara Vance. When she arrived at the council chamber, all 12 species were represented, their eyes fixed on her with expressions she could not read. Explain this, the Volcari said. Their many mouths moved together in a way that made Alara's skin crawl. Your species offers itself for destruction, willingly, eagerly. This cannot be true. It is true, Alara said. She stood straight and did not look away. Humans have always been willing to die for things bigger than themselves. This is no different. It is very different, the Seraphim sang. Their lights flickered with distress. This is not death. This is ending. Complete erasure. No afterlife. No memory. No continuation of any kind. And yet your people line up for it like children waiting for sweets. Maybe that is the point, Alara said quietly. Maybe that is exactly why they are willing to do it. Because it is the hardest thing anyone can give. The Korvath ambassador stepped forward. His scales shifted colors as he moved, dark red to darker black. We have studied humans for 2 centuries, he said. We have called you weak, emotional, unstable. But this, he shook his massive head. This is not weakness. This is something we do not have a word for. And it frightens us. Alara returned to the Prometheus with orders that made her feel sick. She was to select humanity's candidate. Out of 30,000 volunteers, she had to choose one person to die forever. She started reading the applications that night. There was a soldier named James who had lost his entire family to the bloom. He wrote that he had nothing left to live for, so he might as well die for something. There was a scientist named Priya who believed her research would be completed by others, and her death would mean more than her life ever could. There was a grandmother named Ruth, 92 years old, who simply said she had lived long enough and wanted to give the young ones a chance. There was a teenager named Amara who had lied about her age on the application. She was only 17. Each file was a story. Each name was a life. And Alara had to pick one to end. Dr. Marcus Chun found her in the observation lounge at 3 in the morning, staring at datapads covered in names. He was the ship's chaplain, a soft-spoken man with kind eyes and gray in his temples. He sat down beside her without asking and waited until she was ready to speak. How do I choose? She asked finally. How do I look at 30,000 people who want to save the galaxy and pick one to disappear forever? Maybe you are asking the wrong question, Marcus said gently. You are asking how to choose who should die. But perhaps you should be asking what makes a sacrifice meaningful. And what does make it meaningful? Marcus thought for a long moment. Every species in the Concord refused because they see a soul as something to be preserved, like a treasure in a box. But what if humans understand something they do not? What if the meaning of a soul is not in keeping it safe, but in what it chooses to become? Alara did not answer. She did not know how to answer. 3 decks below them, Admiral Yuki Tanaka sat alone in her office. She was 68 years old, with white hair and hands that had guided fleets through impossible battles. Her husband had died 10 years ago. Her children had grown and moved to distant colonies. Her service record was complete, her legacy secure. She opened a blank document and began to type her volunteer application. She did not tell anyone. She did not ask for permission. She simply made her choice, the way she had made every choice in her long career, quietly, firmly, and without looking back. When she was finished, she read it over once, made a small correction, and sent it to Commander Vance's office. Then she started recording her memories. Everything she wanted to leave behind for the people she loved. If she was going to become nothing, she wanted to make sure something of her remained. Outside her window, another star went dark. The clock was ticking. 60 hours remained. Alara needed answers. She returned to her quarters and waited for the blue light to come again. For hours, nothing happened. She paced back and forth across the small room, her mind racing with questions that had no answers. Why did the key need a soul? Why could the architect not stop the bloom itself? What was really going on here? Finally, just as she was about to give up, the light appeared. It started soft and grew brighter until she felt herself dissolving again, falling through space and time into that strange place between dimensions. The architect was waiting for her, its impossible shape shifting and changing like clouds in a storm. "You have returned," it said. "I did not expect you so soon." "I need to understand," Alara said. Her voice was hard. "Before I send one of my people to die forever, I need to know the truth. Why does the key need a soul? And why can you not stop the bloom yourself?" The architect was silent for a long moment. Its many eyes closed, then opened again, and Alara saw something in them she had not expected. Shame. "Very well," the architect said. "You deserve to know what you are truly dealing with." The space around them changed. Images appeared, floating in the void like memories given form. Alara saw the galaxy as it had been billions of years ago, young and bright and full of possibility. She saw the architect moving through it like a gardener through a garden, planting the seeds of life on countless worlds. "I created all of you," the architect said. "Every species in your Concord began as my design. I shaped the conditions that would lead to intelligence, to consciousness, to souls that could think and dream and wonder. I was proud of my work." The images shifted. Alara saw a species she did not recognize, tall beings with silver skin and 4 arms. They moved through their cities with purpose and built machines that touched the stars. "The Corellians," the architect said. "They were my greatest achievement. The first to develop true interstellar travel. The first to understand the deeper workings of the universe. They were brilliant and ambitious and creative. What happened to them? They grew too powerful." The architect's voice became heavy with old pain. "They learned how to manipulate reality itself. They began to change the fundamental laws of physics in ways that threatened the stability of the entire galaxy. I warned them. I begged them to stop. But they would not listen. The images showed fire, war, destruction on a scale Alara could not imagine. So I stopped them myself." Alara felt cold. "You killed them." "I erased them. Completely. Not just their bodies, but their history, their influence, their very possibility. I removed them from existence as if they had never been." The architect's shape flickered with distress. "I told myself it was necessary. I told myself I was protecting the galaxy. But the universe does not forgive such interventions. The entropy bloom is the consequence of my action. A wound in reality that has been spreading ever since, slowly, inevitably, eating everything I built. The bloom is your fault. Alara whispered, double quotes. Yes. And you have been watching it destroy civilizations for millions of years. Yes. Alara felt anger rising in her chest. Then why do you not fix it yourself? If you are powerful enough to erase an entire species, you must be powerful enough to stop this. I am too vast, the architect said. Too disconnected from your reality. I exist outside of time and space as you understand them. I can see everything, but I can barely touch anything. The key is my attempt to bridge that gap, to focus my power through something small and real and mortal. But it requires a lens, a translator, a soul that cares about existence in a way I no longer can. So you need one of us to care for you, to care with me, to guide my power, to show me where to aim. The architect's eyes focused on her with terrible intensity. I have offered this bargain to countless species across millions of years. The Corellians were not the only civilization to face the bloom. Others came before your Concord. Others will come after. And every single one has made the same choice. They refuse. They run. They die. But you keep offering. I keep hoping. Despite everything, I keep hoping that someday, someone will be willing to help me fix my mistake. The architect paused. And now I have come to humanity. The youngest species. The strangest species. The ones who frighten me most of all. Why do we frighten you? The architect laughed, and the sound shook the dimensions around them. Because you are impossible. Every other species I created follows patterns, I understand. They seek survival. They avoid pain. They protect themselves and their kind. But humans do none of these things consistently. You run toward danger. You sacrifice yourselves for strangers. You fall in love with things you know will break your hearts. Alara thought about the 30,000 volunteers. She thought about the grandmother who had lived enough. She thought about the teenager who wanted her life to mean something. That is why you saved us for last, she said. Yes, because I suspected you might actually say yes. And I did not know if that was beautiful or terrible. Alara felt the pull of reality calling her back. Before she left, she asked one more question. If we do this, if we give you a soul, what happens to them? Where do they go? The architect was quiet for a long time. I do not know, it admitted finally. The key has never been used. No one has ever been willing to pay the price. Perhaps they become nothing. Perhaps they become something new. Perhaps they become part of me, seeing through my eyes, living in my eternity. I cannot promise anything except that they will not be alone. And neither will I. The light pulled Alara back to her ship. She arrived in her quarters to find Admiral Tanaka's volunteer application waiting on her. Datapad. 40-8 hours remained, and Alara still did not know how to choose. 30 hours remained when Ensign David Okonko knocked on Alara's door. He was young, barely 25, with nervous eyes and hands that would not stop moving. Alara had seen his name in the crew manifest but had never spoken to him before. He worked in engineering, maintaining the systems that kept the ship alive. Commander, he said, I need to tell you something. It is about the volunteers. Alara let him in. She had been reviewing applications for 16 hours straight, and her eyes burned from staring at screens. David stood in the middle of her room, looking at the floor. My sister is on the list, he said. Her name is Amara. She is 17 years old. Alara felt something cold settle in her stomach. She remembered the application. The teenager who had lied about her age. She told me she finally found something worth being remembered for, David continued. His voice cracked. She has always felt invisible, unimportant. Our parents died when she was young, and she grew up thinking she did not matter. She thinks this is the only way her life can mean anything. Alara closed her eyes. She thought about all the applications she had read. The soldier who had lost his family and had nothing left to live for. The scientist who did not believe her life was worth much. The grandmother who had decided she was finished. How many of her volunteers were heroes? And how many were just people trying to escape their pain? "Thank you for telling me," she said to David. "I will take care of it." After he left, Alara sat in silence for a long time. She thought about the architect's words. The key required a soul freely given. But what did freely mean? If someone volunteered because they wanted to die anyway, was that really a choice? Or was it something else? Something darker? She called Dr. Marcus Chen and Admiral Tanaka to her quarters. When they arrived, she told them what she had realized. "Some of our volunteers are not heroes," she said. "They are people who have given up on themselves. They see this as a way out, not a way forward." The architect asked for a sacrifice, not a suicide. Admiral Tanaka listened with her hands folded in her lap. Her face showed nothing, but Alara noticed a small tightness around her eyes. "How do we tell the difference?" Marcus asked. "Every volunteer has a reason. Every reason involves some kind of pain. That does not make them less valid." "No," Alara agreed. "But there is a difference between someone who wants to give everything and someone who wants to give up everything. The first is a gift. The second is an escape." She stood up and walked to her window. Outside, the evacuation fleet moved slowly through space, millions of lights against the darkness. Somewhere out there, the entropy bloom was still coming. "I am going to change the selection criteria," she said. "No one under 30. No one with untreated psychological conditions. No one whose primary motivation is escape from their own life." She paused. "This is not about judging who deserves to live or die. It is about making sure we send someone who is running towards something, not away from something. That will eliminate most of the volunteers," Tanaka said quietly. "Yes, it will." Alara turned to face them both. "I am also going to make a broadcast. Every human ship, every refugee corridor, every outpost we can reach. People need to understand what we are really asking for." An hour later, her face appeared on screens across the fleet. Millions of people stopped what they were doing to watch and listen. "My name is Commander Alara Vance," she said. "You all know about the architect's offer. You know that we have been asked to give a soul in exchange for the galaxy. And I know that many of you have volunteered." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I want to talk about what this sacrifice really means. The architect asked for a soul freely given. But there is nothing free about despair disguised as sacrifice. If you are volunteering because you think your life does not matter, I am telling you now, your life matters. If you are volunteering because you want to escape your pain, I am telling you now, there are other ways to heal." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "We are not going to send someone who is running from their life. We are going to send someone who is running towards something greater. That is the difference between giving up and giving everything. And it matters. It matters more than anything else." The broadcast ended. The responses came in within minutes. Some people were angry. They said Alara had no right to judge them. They said their reasons were their own. They said she was taking away their chance to be heroes, but many more people sent messages of thanks. They said they had not realized what they were really feeling. They said they needed help, not oblivion. They said they wanted to live. The list of volunteers shrank from 30,000 to 300. Then to 50, then to 12. Alara reviewed each file personally. She talked to each candidate for hours, learning their stories, understanding their reasons. Slowly, the list shrank further. In the end, 3 names remained. Admiral Yuki Tanaka, 68 years old, a lifetime of service, a husband long dead, children who had grown and gone, a woman who had accomplished everything she had ever wanted and was ready to give one final gift. Dr. Marcus Chen, 52 years old, a man of faith who believed that consciousness was eternal and that giving himself to the key was not ending but transformation. A philosopher who saw death as a door, not a wall. And Commander Alara Vance. She had added her own name to the list without telling anyone. She had started this. She had spoken to the architect. She had asked others to give everything. How could she ask for a sacrifice she was not willing to make herself? 20 hours remained. 3 candidates stopped, one choice. The fate of the galaxy waited for an answer. The council chamber was full. Every species of the Galactic Concord had sent representatives to witness humanity's final decision. The Valkyrie hive mind buzzed quietly in one corner. The Seraphim floated near the ceiling, their lights dim with worry. The Korvath stood with their arms crossed, their scales shifting colors as they waited. And in the center of the room stood the 3 human candidates, Admiral Tanaka, Dr. Chun, and Commander Vance. Alara looked at the faces around her. Some showed curiosity. Others showed fear. A few showed something that might have been respect. For 200 years, humanity had been the youngest and weakest member of the Concord. Today, they were the only ones willing to pay the price. "We have made our decision," Alara said. The room went silent. Admiral Tanaka stepped forward first. She was calm, her white hair pulled back from her face, her uniform perfect. She spoke in a clear, steady voice. "I am ready to give myself to the key. My life has been full. My service has been long. I have no regrets and no doubts. If my soul can save the galaxy, then that is the best ending I could ask for." Dr. Chun spoke next. He was softer, gentler, his voice warm even in this cold moment. "I believe that consciousness does not truly end. It changes. It transforms. Whatever the key does to me, I will not really disappear. I will become something new, something connected to the architect and to everything it protects. This is not death to me. It is the next step of my journey." Finally, Alara spoke. But she did not argue for herself. Instead, she said something no one expected. "The architect told me it needed someone small enough to care. It said its power was too vast, too disconnected from our reality. It needed a mortal soul to focus its will, to guide its hand." She paused, looking at the alien faces around her. "But the architect has been asking the wrong question for millions of years. It keeps asking who will die. It never asks who will live." Murmurs spread through the room. The Valkyrie leaned closer, their many eyes fixed on Alara. "I am proposing an alternative," she continued. "Not one soul, but 3. Not complete sacrifice, but shared burden. The 3 of us, together, will each give a part of ourselves to the key. Our memories, our will, our hope. Fragments woven together into something stronger than any single person could be." The Korvath ambassador made a sound of disbelief. The architect specified 1 soul. "You cannot simply change the terms. Why not?" Alara asked. "The architect is not a god. It is a being like any other, older and more powerful, but still capable of change. It said it needed a soul because it needed someone who cared. Someone small, someone mortal. But it never said we could not share the weight." Before anyone could respond, the air in the center of the chamber began to glow. Blue light swirled and grew, and suddenly the architect was there, its impossible shape filling the space between species. Thousands of eyes looked down at the 3 humans standing together. "This was not the bargain," the architect said. Its voice echoed through dimensions, making the floor vibrate beneath their feet. "Then make a new one," Alara replied. She did not step back. She did not look away. "You said you are a gardener. Gardens do not grow through sacrifice alone. They grow through cultivation, through care, through hands working together. We are offering you something you have never had before. Partners, not martyrs. The architect was silent. Its shape flickered and changed, colors shifting through emotions that had no human names. Every species has tried to negotiate with me, it said finally. The Valkyrie offered their collective processing power. The Seraphine offered energy from their stars. The Korvath offered their strongest warriors to fight the bloom. But none of them offered what you are offering. None of them offered to share the burden. None of them offered to make me less alone. Its many eyes focused on the three humans. Why would you do this? Why would you give pieces of yourselves to something you do not understand? Marcus Chen smiled gently. Because that is what love is. Giving yourself to something bigger, even when you cannot see the end. Tanaka nodded. Because we are soldiers. We do not abandon our posts, even when the mission seems impossible. Elara reached out and took both their hands. Because we are human. And this is what we do. For a long moment, nothing happened. The galaxy held its breath, and then the architect laughed odd. It was not a mocking laugh. It was the sound of surprise and wonder, and something that might have been joy. It filled the chamber and spilled out into space itself, echoing across stars and worlds. Very well, the architect said. Let us try something new. The key appeared. It was small, smaller than Elara had expected, a simple crystal shape that pulsed with soft light. The architect placed it in the space between the three humans, and they reached for it together. That what happened next was hard to describe. Elara felt herself stretching, expanding, touching something vast and old and infinitely lonely. She felt Marcus's faith flowing beside her, warm and sure. She felt Tanaka's strength, steady as stone. And she felt the architect, massive and lost and desperately grateful for the company. Their perspectives merged. Their hopes combined. Their small mortal caring focused the architect's ancient power like a lens focusing light. Across the galaxy, the entropy bloom stopped. For the first time in millions of years, it did not advance. And then, slowly, it began to reverse. Dead stars flickered back to life. Destroyed worlds reformed from scattered dust. Light returned to the darkness. When it was over, Elara found herself standing in the council chamber again. She was still herself, but smaller somehow, lighter, as if she had given away part of her weight. Beside her, Tanaka and Chan were recovering too. They were alive. They were whole. They were still themselves, but they were also something more. The Valkyrie ambassador approached them, its many mouths moving in confusion. You survived? All three of you? We shared the cost, Elara said. And it turns out, when you share something, you can carry more than you ever could alone. The architect spoke one final time before fading back to its dimension. Its voice was softer now, warmer. Thank you, it said. Thank you for teaching an old god how to hope. Elara smiled, though her eyes were wet with tears. Thank you for letting us try. In the years that followed, the galactic concord changed. Humanity was no longer the youngest or the weakest. They were the species that had found a third option when everyone else could only see two. They were the ones who had taught an ancient being that it did not have to be alone. Admiral Tanaka retired to teach ethics at the academy. Dr. Chun wrote books about faith and connection that became required reading across the Concord. And Commander Vance became Admiral Vance, leading the first expedition beyond the Milky Way. Sometimes, late at night, when she was alone on the observation deck, Elara felt a presence beside her, vast and ancient and grateful. How are you? She would whisper. Better, it would answer. Not alone. And together, they would watch the stars burn bright